Hello, everyone. I am Charlotte Varnum. I wanted to talk to you guys about something today that I'm really passionate about because it's had a huge influence in my life and just kind of who I've become as a person. And that is keeping art in schools, not necessarily just visual arts, but just music, literature, everything. Art in schools, it's kind of a really art itself is a very broad category. In general, it's just kind of classified as something that is created with the imagination and skill, and that it's beautiful or expresses important ideas or feelings. In schools particularly, well, in a broad sense, it's kind of broken up into fine arts and practical arts. So fine arts would be like painting, drawing, music, things like that. Bless you. Bless you. Kind of more, not entertainment, but things like of that nature are more of the fine arts. And then practical arts are kind of things like architecture or design and things like that that are actually used in the real world as kind of practical things. So in schools, I'm more talking about the fine arts. Some schools do have kind of practical arts things like scale drawing for architecture type stuff, but I'm more talking about music and visual art, painting, drawing, that kind of thing. And a definition for art that I just kind of liked and kind of expresses how I feel about it is the arts represent an outlet of expression that is usually influenced by culture and which in turn helps to change culture. A little bit of background of art and how it's had its place in education. And along with that definition, art is an inseparable part of culture, and if you go back through history and look at all the different main civilizations that we learn about, like ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, all of that, a huge part of it is art, and you can't really talk about the culture itself without talking about the art of the day, the architecture, the music, the visual designs and the styles that were going on at the time. Kind of the first emergence of art in schools was in ancient Egypt. I looked into Mesopotamia too, but I didn't really see much about art being a part of things. But in Egypt, they didn't really have formal schools yet, but your children would learn their parents' trade, and it was typically males. But so if your father was a carpenter, you would learn to be a carpenter, that kind of thing. And art was actually a big trade. Like if you, as you see, they had the hieroglyphics and things like that, so they used painting and things like that for record keeping and things like that. So it was an important job, and so a kid would learn from their father, who was whoever did that, like painting and sculpting and stuff like that, architecture, and they would learn from their father. So that was kind of the first education of art that happened, and then through the years it became a more formal education and things that everyone could learn throughout time. So modern day, they still have art in schools and everything, but it's really become less of a focus. It's seen as more kind of an inessential thing, like it's cool to learn about and it's fun and it's enjoyable to do, but it's not really important so much as math and writing and science and things like that are. And kind of the big thing in school systems when this happened was in 2002, the No Child Left Behind Act, which was actually just an update of an existing education act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, that was made in like the 60s or 70s, I think. But it established standardized testing in schools and really put a focus on amping up the test scores and just kind of general achievement of students on a national level. And they thought that standardized testing may do this. And it has kind of increased scores, but one of the big reasons why there were such a lull of test scores, or no, why test scores seemed to be good and then they got bad was whenever the test scores for SAT and ACT and things like that were higher, it was because less people were taking them, because less people were interested in going to college. And then as time went on in kind of like the late 90s and early 2000s and everything, people were widely more interested in going to college, and so they started taking the tests, but so more people took them, so there was a lot lower scores, because lots of people, just the range of scores, you're gonna have good ones and bad ones. And so there has been a main focus on schools in science and math and everything. And after the recession in 2008, schools took really significant budget cuts. And so the first programs that were cut and left behind were art, because it was seen as inconsequential and not something that would help the nation on in keeping with success of the world in business and finance and things like that. Why I think that art should be kept and why it has a lot of benefits, not just because it's fun and enjoyable and everything, but it actually helps. And it's associated with gains in math, reading, cognitive ability, critical thinking, and verbal skills. And it also, students who are influenced by art continually through their education, it's seen that they have improved motivation, concentration, confidence, and teamwork building. So, and why I think it's so important that it be focused on in schools specifically, is, like I said before, it's not only enjoyable to learn, but it allows students to be open to each other and communicating creative ideas, and it makes them more open to just new ideas in general and being critical thinkers and just being well-rounded, developed people. And also, statistically, people who have more exposure to art outside of school are more affluent, wealthy people, and so they're fine if art gets cut in school, but those of lower socioeconomic status and everything, that may be the only time that they're ever exposed to things like that. And so if it's cut in schools, then they'll never get exposed to it and just be robbed of a lot of benefits that it gives you, and it just makes you a well-rounded person. So I think it's really important to keep it in the schools. And kind of my closing and just call to people is just that a lot of people just think it's kind of, you know, like, oh, creative people or whatever, it's like fun, art and everything, but it's so important just as people, because if we remove the arts, music, art, visual art, culture and everything, if we remove that from culture, then we lose our culture. And if we lose our culture, then we lose humanity, because that's what makes us people, as opposed to just beasts, that we can be creative like our maker and everything, and that we can create things and think in that way. And so I just really urge you, you know, whenever educators, whoever, I know there's several people that want to be educators here, but yeah, if the teachers themselves think it's important, then they can influence the kids, and then that's the next generation. And even those who don't want to be educators, just people who raise their own children, it's so important to expose them to the creative side of life, because it's not necessarily gonna, you know, get them a great job or whatever, but it just makes them a better person. And I just think it's really, really important. So, thank you.